I'm Joshua Adams, and this is the Industry Insights Podcast, where I am joined in the Rock Paper Simple studio by community leaders as we dive into industry topics and perspectives. Thanks for joining us today. I have Meghan, founder and CEO of Swiftpaws. Now, Meghan, we've known each other for how long now?
I think it's going on 5 or 6 years.
5 or 6 years.
Yeah.
You were just making the switch into the consumer product market, I believe, when we met.
Yes, we were developing a consumer version of our product, but it hadn't come out yet.
It hadn't come out yet. We had some conversation. It was really cool to kind of see what you were doing. You've come a long way since then. So what I'd like to do today is focus a bit on kind of the idea behind product development, starting a business entrepreneurial effort around a product, but dig a little deeper, right? And so a lot of people say, and you mentioned this to me earlier, oh, I got an idea, a need, and I can go make a product and I fulfill it. And you're like, oh yeah, there's a lot of steps in between. There's a lot of things that nobody ever tells you that you have to find out the hard way. So I'd like to dig into that today. Does that work for you?
Absolutely.
Awesome. So let's start so that everybody kind of knows what you're doing. Let's go high level. What is it that you do? What are your products? Maybe tell us a little bit of the backstory, and then we'll transition from there.
Yeah, so I'll start out by saying I never intended to become an entrepreneur. I got a degree in economics, firmly thought that I was going to go into investment banking or something finance related, and kind of stumbled into dog sports, which led me to lure coursing, which if you've never heard of that, it's dogs chasing after a fake squirrel. And I knew I wanted to try it. So I didn't set out going, I want to start my own business, therefore I must do these set of things to be successful. Because of that, we've had a really long journey. It's been a really organic journey. But for Swiftpaws, where we've evolved to today, right? Swiftpaws is primarily a brand that's concerned with pet wellness, right? So I really believe that I'm a happier person and I'm happier, healthier, all the things when my pets are happy and healthy. And I have this amazing moment that happens sometimes where I'm watching one of my dogs just enjoying maybe a chew or a bone that I've given her, or maybe my puppy. I introduced my puppy to Swiftpaws for the first time. We can talk about that, but she's just turned 6 months old. And I go easy on puppies because their bodies are still growing. But I introduced her for the first time and just watching her interact with it for the first time, that joy brings me joy. So we firmly believe that pet happiness equals human happiness. That brings us back to our products, which are primarily lure coursing kits. So the idea of chasing after a fake squirrel, our products let you set up a course in your backyard and they get to chase after that fake squirrel.
Love that. So much fun.
Yeah, one of the best parts is you control it. So it's kind of like you and your dog playing together. And then if we back up a little bit further than that, it's really based on the original sport of lure coursing, which was very exclusive. So it wasn't open to everybody when I discovered it.
Awesome. And we have some of those products in front of us.
Too.
So why don't you tell me a little bit about what I'm looking at here?
Yeah. So what you're not seeing here is the origins, right? So we started out with a professional grade piece of equipment just to run events for doggy daycares and clubs. And that equipment took us from when I founded the company in 2012 all the way up until 2019. This product here, the larger one, is our Swiftpaws Home. And Home was the first consumer version of the product. So I like to say that we pivoted from commercial to consumer in 2019. And that's really when things started to take off. And I realized, oh, there's a whole business here that we have to run. Put it into perspective. Up until that point, we had sold about 100 total machines, right? So from 2012 to 2019, 100. And the first round of the home version, which we launched on Kickstarter, was 1,000.
Wow.
That's a quick way to 10x your business, is to go to a smaller version that's a little more affordable. And then this one that we see next to it is what we call Chase. So another big pivot point came for us in 2022 when we aired on Shark Tank. There's a whole story behind that.
Yes.
But it was an amazing turning point for us because now so many people had seen something that they'd never seen before. It's hard for me to explain what it is. If you've never seen it before, you can't really conceptualize it. So now so many people had seen it and the reaction was, oh, my dog would love this, but I wish it was a little more affordable. So it was a really positive reaction. but we like to listen to our customers, right? I mean, I could make the best product in the world, but if nobody can afford it, there's no business there.
Mm-hmm.
So we spent the entirety of 2023 redesigning the home version to make it lightweight, more affordable, but without compromising on things like quality, durability, and safety. And so Chase is the scaled down version. It's like our little mini light version. And that shipped for the first time for the holidays in 2023.
Awesome. Awesome. And I hear it was a success.
We made it. It was down to the wire. And so we launched it for pre-order and we were very transparent. We told our customers, hey, our goal is to ship it in time for the holidays. We're going to do our best to make that happen. And if it doesn't happen, like, we're going to keep you informed. So there were ups, there were downs. We were putting out updates a couple times a month and letting people know. And it didn't go without its hangups. I mean, we had little bugs to fix and we're still improving it. This is the first version, by the way, that we can continue to improve with over-the-air updates once it's in a customer's hands.
Wow.
So that's the cool thing about it, is those earliest customers, we're actually expecting a performance update this coming month, and it's based on their feedback. So all those first customers, we have literally directly in the app, they can say, send feedback, and they say, hey, I wish it did this, or I wish it was a little bit more responsive, or whatever their little gripes are with it. And our engineering team can work on it, and then we can send updates, which is very cool.
Very cool. So let's, taking that in context, let's dig into the topic, which really is, and you kind of lit up when I said, hey, what can we talk about? You're like, I know what I want to talk about. And it was really kind of the hidden story behind starting a product company.
Yeah.
And so I'd love to hear a little bit of kind of your perspectives on that. And what are those things you encountered that maybe you could help the next person that wants to start something like this to avoid, or maybe just be prepared for, because frankly, most of it can't be avoided.
Yeah.
But let's dive into that.
Absolutely. I mean, if you look at the peaks, right? If you look at all the successes, what a success story, right? She's founded the company and made some of these and then pivoted here and then had more success and then went on Shark Tank. And
oh, look, she's got her golden ticket.
Oh,
she's wearing
she won
today.
Lori's golden ticket.
Yes.
And those are very sweet moments. But up until most recently, at best, our company has been able to break even, which is nothing to laugh at. I mean, being able to break even means you're paying your staff and you're covering all of your costs. And people really like to think about, if you think about Shark Tank, right? What does it cost you to make? Well, the raw materials and the cost to produce one of these products obviously is not everything that it costs a company to run. So there's rent and there's the light bill and there's all of the salary. So we assemble all of our products still here in my hometown. So I was born and raised in Brevard County, Florida, and all of that is done here, including our fulfillment.
Awesome.
Yeah. And so as our team grows, like they have to eat, they have to feed their families. So all of those costs go on top of just the raw cost that goes into the product. One thing I wish I had maybe had a little bit more mentorship in the very early years, or as we were making that pivot to the first consumer version, was just how much little things affect you at scale. So the best example I have of that is shipping cost. I mean, who thinks about shipping cost anymore? You buy something, shipping's usually free, or if you hit a minimum threshold, it's free. And we don't worry about shipping anymore. But as a company, right, the home original package is really big. And it costs us sometimes as much as $36 to ship to a customer. And when you're talking about a product where the retail price is a little over $450, $36 is still a big chunk of that cost. And when you're making even 1,000 of them, not such a big deal. But when you start to think about making 5,000, 10,000, and you know where we want to go with this, we want anybody who has a pet with a little too much energy to be able to have one. That's a lot of cost. So the development that we did with Chase actually reduced the size of the package to 20% of the original size. That's 1/5 the size. So the cost of shipping went from about, anywhere from $18 to like $36 to $8 to $12.
Huge difference.
Massive
Huge difference. And you showed me those boxes earlier. It's a massive difference.
It really is. And those things, right? Those little details can really make the difference on whether you sink or swim. So everybody says, right, when you're coming up with a business idea, think of a problem. Think of a personal problem in your life, and then think of a solution to that problem. And I would agree that most good products, most good brands, most good businesses are based on that fundamental core problem and solution statement, especially when it's a hardware physical product. But if we had not made some of the changes we've made, we would be looking at a product where if I sold 5 times what I did last year, I actually would start to lose money. And it's not because of the product or the value or the quality of the product or the demand from the people. It's all those other little things that go into it. So looking at scale is a big thing that I don't think people think about when they're starting out.
Right. And where do you think, I mean, besides besides just doing it and realizing, oh shoot, what are the checkpoints maybe now that you're putting into place, right? Because I imagine there's a lot of times where, all right, well, I learned it by doing it. I can attest to that. A lot of very expensive lessons I've
Mhm.
had over the years as well, running an agency. But what do you think now? How do you predict that, right? How do you
Yeah.
avoid you say earlier, hey, I wish I had some mentorship in. How do you how do you look forward to that? How does somebody who's getting into it say, how do I avoid some of those pitfalls?
Yeah. So I remember a conversation early on as we were making this version, and it had to do with the number of screws because we wanted to make something that's durable and you have to fasten pieces together. And the question was, does it need to have this many screws? And I think it wasn't dived into. We had a lot on our plate. We were really trying to meet a deadline. We had launched it on Kickstarter. It was really successful. So now you have the pressure of trying
Of
to
course.
deliver it. And the fact that this product here has more than 20 screws and the new product Chase has 2 is
Oh,
a massive difference in assembly time. The quality is the same. You still get something that is pieced together and the consumer experience isn't any different. Has snap fit built in, so it's a little bit more of a complicated tool. My tooling cost might be a little higher, but in the long run, there are certain things I don't want to compromise on. And one of those is assembly in the US. I want to do as much of it here in my backyard with not only US resources, but local resources as possible. And because that's a pillar that I am really holding on to, because it's valuable to me and it means something to me, it means that I have to worry about things like how many screws, because it's not about the cost of the screw. It's about the time it takes somebody to put it together. So, in the same amount of time that it takes us to assemble one of the old version home originals, whether that be the main unit or the pulley, we can assemble 10 or more of the new one.
wow.
And,
Wow.
and what does that mean? That means that I get to continue to have my US based resources. I don't have to offshore. I can grow and still grow locally. And that's important to me. So those are the things. I mean, if you're looking at it from a perspective, start with what do I really, really care about?
Mm.
Is it making it in the USA? If it is, then I really have to dial in on things that are going to make it more difficult to continue to do that as I grow. I know so many people who started out making in the USA, and this is not to shame anybody. So many brands have to go overseas. We get a lot of our materials internationally as well. There are certain things we can't source here. It's a balance, it's always a
Mm.
balance. But for us, we want to assemble it here. So if we want to assemble it here, and if we're not willing to compromise on that, we have to figure out how to continue to do that, even when we're selling 10, 20, 30 times the volume.
And I think when you look at scale, that's when things start to become real, right? How can I reproduce this again and again and again? You can do anything once.
Mhm.
Try doing that thing 1,000 times, and all of a sudden things start falling apart. The wheels fly off the
Yes.
race car.
Yes. I love that you said that because we have a list. Every time we do something new or for the first time, we have a list of our never agains. It's something that our whole team does. And we actually have a list of never agains with our Chase units right now. And it has, it's not necessarily never again will I make it this color, right? It's more about never again will we do it exactly the same way because it took too long or it was too easy to do wrong, right? So we're trying to weed out before we assemble them again how we can streamline the process. So our never agains with the original unit was never again will I have a screw where a snap could go.
I love
And
that.
so and there was iterations of Chase that had more screws. And I just kept going back to the drawing board and I said, but can we eliminate that screw? Without compromising on quality, durability, or safety.
Right.
So
Right.
again, what's important to you? And really pare down the rest.
Right. And I think people underestimate how quickly something small adds up.
Mhm.
So if it adds a minute to the assembly time, that's 1,000 minutes. What does that cost?
Mhm.
Right, a minute of labor, okay, not a big deal. I do 10,000 units, I've got 10,000 minutes. Oh, well, all of a
It's a
sudden that
lot more.
starts to add up really, really fast. And especially when it comes to labor costs, those can get out of control like very quickly. If you have to hire one more person, that adds benefit costs, that adds taxes, that adds payroll taxes, that adds a whole lot of burden to what you're doing. You add enough people extra, all of a sudden you're adding warehouse space,
Mhm.
assembly space, those kinds of things, additional tools for them to work with. So all
So
these things
right.
that you're not thinking about, that one little tweak
Mhm.
that 10,000 units later affects.
And where it affects. So I looked at we're just after the start of the year, right? So we get to look at last year's full financials. One of the amazing things that I saw last year, if we look at 2022, which is the year we aired on Shark Tank, and 2023, we intentionally didn't plan to grow our top line revenue because we didn't have the new version yet. We were developing it. So instead, we had an intentionally flat year. We did within 2% the same amount of gross revenue in 2023 that we did in 2022. But again, if I scaled on this product,
Mm,
it's not scaling bottom line. So, with that though, Chase made up about a third. So, pre sale on Chase, pre orders, the customers willing to help us bring it to life that we shipped in time for the holidays, made up about a third of our total gross revenue in 2023. So, you've got gross revenue almost the same year over year. And then you have your costs that go into the product. And then you have what comes after that. So, that's before, right, salaries and the rest of those
right,
costs.
right.
But when you look at that, when you look at what we made after all the expenses, we actually had a 19% improvement
On your gross.
on our gross, yes.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, on our
Okay.
gross profit.
Yeah.
So our gross revenue was about the same, but our gross profit improved almost 20%. And that's largely thanks to the changes that we made. Of course, we made very big investment of time, energy, resources, money into that. So the year was a loss,
Oh, yeah. I
okay?
understand
Because
that.
you're investing
Been
in
there.
growth.
Mhm.
But it's so reassuring to me. So those are the signs. What are the signs that the little changes that you're making are working?
Right.
And that to me is a big sign because that means better margins moving forward. And that's even with pre-selling it at a price way lower than our retail.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. I think that's something too that's worth mentioning for entrepreneurs who are trying to start their own thing. There's a lot of times where to get to the next step, you've got to put some money into it. You've got to invest into it. And so it can be sometimes this game of, okay, I've got to build up to a certain point so that I can spend some money over here
Mhm.
improving, making a mistake or two, creating a couple more never agains on my list type
Yeah.
things so that I can then get to that next step. That you going and saying, "Hey, I'm adding 20% to my gross profit," came with an expense that was
Mm.
higher than that increase on your gross profit.
Much higher.
It might
Yes.
take you a couple of years to get that back,
Yeah.
but that investment now allows you to scale better.
It
That
does.
investment now allows you to have more economic drive through your
Mhm.
business, which benefits everyone. That
Mhm.
benefits anybody involved with the business.
Absolutely. And from a holistic view, right? If you have a product that you know isn't very profitable to scale, if your margins aren't enough to be able to scale, then you really can't scale your marketing and you really can't scale your team. And it affects everything
Mm,
else. So there's no point in adding fuel to the fire, right? So we also know that we have a decent demand for the product. So if we were to add a little bit to our ad spend or our marketing, we know we could sell more. But we had to kind of hold ourselves back last year because we knew that we didn't have the version released yet that we were going to be ready to hit the gas with. And so it's a unique position that you're catching me at here because
yes.
I've joked all the way up to this point. If we had had this conversation a year ago, I would have said next step profitability. And it is really true because as your company that's trying to break through break even and move into a place where you're turning a small profit, those are the things you have to think about is we have to be willing to make those investments that are definitely going to cost a lot now, but are going to be either one-time costs or costs that aren't recurring. So tooling, for example, very costly, but for the life of that tool, you're not going to have to spend it again. But things like marketing dollar would have been wasted a little bit last year because we wouldn't have been ready to
Right.
really scale.
Right. And so one of the reasons when we are having conversations with a client from a brand and a messaging standpoint, is the brand ready?
Yeah.
Right. What are the goals? What are we trying to accomplish with the business? It's one of the reasons we start our conversations with, what are your goals?
Mm.
What are you trying to accomplish? And sometimes they don't know, which
Right.
kind of throws up a red flag for us to say, well, wait a minute, we're just going to be running off in a million directions then. What do you care about? Do you care about positioning? Are you specifically have revenue goals that you're going after? Are you after, we have some clients that say revenue targets. That's all we care about. We
Mhm.
have some clients that are saying, I just want to position myself so that I can position a new offering. We have another client that says, I want to sell the company in 3 years.
Yeah.
So I don't care if what you do for us generates more revenue right now. We just want to look better for the potential acquirer. Those are very different goals,
Super different.
right? And your goal is, hey, I want to get to profitability,
Mhm.
but I can't do that with this current product. So my goal isn't to scale revenue and scale more sales with this yet. I need to break even and have money to invest in this. And then when I'm ready, I want to scale. So you
Yeah.
had a very specific goal. And I think that's very, very wise. And I think that a lot of business owners don't think that way,
Mhm.
and they can get themselves in trouble, right? They can
Oh,
get
yeah.
themselves in trouble with that.
Especially after something like Shark Tank, an organic exposure event, which is going to bring so many free eyes onto the business. We could have sold far more with a little bit of extra ad spend than we did. We would have lost more.
Mm,
And it's hard. I think I've heard it called shiny object syndrome before. It's hard not to
yep.
just want to go after that low hanging fruit sometimes.
Yeah, sometimes, for us, our process, our onboarding process starts with what we call a right fit
Yeah.
conversation, right? And then we're checking to see if we're a right fit for each other, because if we onboard the wrong type of client,
Mm,
it's a disaster for everyone, right? We
mm,
need to make sure, can we actually accomplish what they're asking? Let's be honest with ourselves. Can we do what they're asking for? Can we move the needle? At the same time, will we enjoy working together?
right.
Because
Yeah.
there's been times we have had times where I've called up a client and said, "Hey, yeah, I don't know if this is working," right? Our
Mm,
teams aren't getting along, right?
hmm.
And so we try to filter that out early so
Yeah.
that
It
not
saves everybody.
right, not every dollar is a good dollar, right?
Hmm.
And in your example, you're saying, "Hey, more revenue wouldn't have helped us."
Hmm.
We've been in those situations as well, right? We've had to say, you know what? No, not more right now. We need to get this right or get that right. We need to make sure that our offering is prepared, is ready for this. We need to make sure we're getting the right customers.
Hmm.
And so I think there's some wisdom in that. It can be very much, hey, go sell, 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 sell. And that can all more revenue isn't always the answer, I guess is what I'm trying to say.
Absolutely. It's so much timing, so much down to timing. I'll give you a short example. Of course, I'm the crazy dog person, so it's going to be a dog example. One of my team members just adopted a dog. He's 1 year old, adorable, scruffy little snaggletooth. He's super cute, and everybody gets to bring their dogs to work at Swiftpaws. It shouldn't be a surprise. Like the warehouse
I am
is
not surprised.
the warehouse is basically a dog park, and the people getting along and the dogs getting along, it's super important to us. And we're a relatively small team. So luckily, the person who was needing to rehome Snoopy was willing to bring him by the warehouse. And so we all went for a pack walk together with our dogs. We just wanted to make sure that also for that dog that he would be comfortable coming into the space and that all the dogs would accept him and that he would accept the other dogs. And it's kind of like when you're trying to work out a business relationship, you really have to feel it out. And it's so worth taking that, it took us an hour. It's so worth taking that time up front to determine if it's going to be a good fit before you've gone and done a lot of things that are hard to undo.
Right, right. You would have that story. That story would come from you.
Yeah, I did tell you I was going to embarrass myself, and I will
That
be dog
that
related.
that is fantastic. I love that. So we've talked about a lot of the challenges, a lot of the learning lessons, a lot of the never agains.
Yeah.
Let's talk about some of the wins. You're 12 years into this. You've had some really big wins lately. Let's share some of those.
Yeah, I mean, that's why you do the hard work, right? And I think for Swiftpaws, timing has been so pivotal to our journey. We just happened to make a piece of commercial equipment at the same time that the AKC opened up the sport to all breeds. And there we were uniquely positioned with a machine that could run all breed shapes and sizes of dogs. So as we think about that trajectory and how it's gotten to us today, this year is full of a couple cool wins. So off the heels of Shark Tank, which was obviously a big peak for us, this year we're celebrating being named one of GrowFL's companies to watch. It's a super cool recognition, especially because we're very proudly a Florida-based company. I mean, our customer support is based in Florida. Our assembly, our partners, even our packaging, right, is done by a Florida-based company.
And worth pointing out, that award is a Florida company to watch.
Yes.
Right. So it's Grow FL, but it's a Florida, one of 50
yes.
companies to watch from Florida.
Yeah. And so that recognition, I think, is coming at a time where we could so benefit from kind of shouting from the mountaintops that, yes, we're growing and we're growing in
We're
Florida.
in Florida. There's no mountains here.
Okay, there's no mountains. We're shouting from the top of our causeway that we get to grow here. Because so many companies, as they do scale, they kind of have to go somewhere either more industrial, or we talked about offshoring. So the Grow FL, first of all, the nomination and the whole process, and because you guys are a nominee.
Oh yeah, yeah. We were awarded in 2020.
Amazing. Yeah. Well, what a tough year to get that.
Yes.
But the recognition, right? I think it's coming at a time that is so exciting for us because we're ready to really grow. And then in the same year, an industry prize. So we were named one of 2024's. It's called the Pet Care Innovation Prize. So it is sponsored by Purina, and they have 5 winning companies every year that get a $25,000 prize. It's completely non-dilutive. And while, yes, the funding is very much appreciated, it's also just recognition in the pet care industry. And so these types of things, right? Shark Tank, Grow FL, the industry Purina Innovation Network Prize is coming at a time for us where we can see the effects of all of the hard work that we've put in. And I'm so grateful that we have done the work when we did, because now we have a product that we can scale on.
Right. You did the scalability work. That's exactly where my head was going.
Mm-hmm.
And now that energy and that momentum is beginning to build, which is perfect. Some brands, unfortunately, end up with the momentum too early.
Mm-hmm.
And I've seen that where the momentum gets there and they build and they build and they build and they're excited, and then they can't do it. They can't deliver. So you've been fortunate that you did the work. You knuckled down, said, I'm going to do the hard work, did the scalability work. So the timing is really, really, really good.
Right. It's a bet, right? If I put in the investment now, will I see the return later? And it's so hard not to doubt yourself. But that's where amazing mentors and resources, and I've got an incredible board and just people along the way. I don't like to reinvent the wheel.
Right.
So where I can, if I can talk to somebody who's either been there before with a similar product or has some insight to lend, it's so useful.
Mentorship is huge.
Mm-hmm.
I think being able to go to others, and that was one of the things I first did when I started, is I just went down the list, like, who do I need to talk to? Who will have breakfast with me, right?
So
anybody that would have breakfast with me, I had breakfast, right?
Yes.
A lot of 6, 7 a.m. breakfast with all these CEOs when I was, 21, 22. And I'm just trying to learn, right? So I think that's a big piece of it. But I think it's also important to recognize this is hard.
Mm-hmm.
Like what you've gone through is hard. There have been days you probably cried over your business.
All the time.
Right?
Yeah.
Tears have been shed. There were days where you didn't sleep.
Mm-hmm.
There were nights you didn't sleep. Well, probably days too. But there were those times where you're like, why am I doing this? Right? We've both
Absolutely.
been there, right?
Yeah.
Why?
Yeah.
Why am I doing this? And sometimes you got to push through it. And so I feel like sometimes we'll hear all the success stories and people think it's easy. So then they go try to do it and like, oh, this is hard. It's hard, but it's worth it. But at the end of the day, I think it's good and it's refreshing to hear some of the other challenges people go through to get there. You're headed in a cool direction. What's next?
Yeah. I mean, for Swiftpaws, what's next is a lot more dog toys.
Of course.
But from a larger perspective, right? I've been thinking about my own mentality and me believing that when my pets are happy, I'm happy. I think there is a grander movement. And for me, I encompass that in a term that I call play well. So play, a lot of science, a lot of study on play for people and also for pets, and how critical it is for our brains and for our development. And to play well, in my opinion, is to provide both physical and mental stimulation for your pets. So conscientiously adding elements into their lives that are giving them those experiences, engaging them in the right ways. So that could be our products, but I mean, you certainly don't have to buy our products. Like, I'm the world's worst salesman because I'm like, no, you can just, so there's so many amazing ways that you can play well with your pet. So for Swiftpaws, we're launching what we call our Play Well initiative. And hopefully we're going to bring in other pet care companies, have talks with other founders, and then also ask our customers, hey, how are you playing well with your pet? So this idea of, can we continue to adapt with our customer? They've told us they want this, what's next? And pet care is changing. So dogs used to be in the backyard and they've somehow made it into the bed, right? So the way we take care of our pets is very different than it was even 10 years ago and definitely generations ago. And because of that, the way that companies and brands have to look at how do we support customers who are taking care of their pets, that has to change too. And so that's why I'm super excited to be here now, again, back to timing, because I love nothing more than exploring what I can do to give my pets a better life. And how cool is it that I get to do it and do it for a living?
I love that. I love it. It's obvious and it's apparent you hate your job. You
Awful.
hate what
Yeah.
you do. But no,
So do the dogs.
right? Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Oh,
Yeah,
obviously,
yeah.
obviously, I've seen the videos. They
Yeah.
obviously hate
Having a
it.
terrible
Yeah,
time.
absolutely. But you have a wonderfully fun project. The product is fantastic. The story is awesome. It's been fun to watch, and I know there's a lot more to come. Thanks so much for taking some time out of your busy schedule to come and chat with me.
Thank you. Thank you for inviting me.
Thank you for joining me on this episode of Industry Insights. If you enjoyed it, be sure to subscribe, comment, or even drop us a line over at rockpapersimple.com.